Howdo folks, David here with another video, and it might be a little bit of a controversial one. I am actually prepared for you guys to absolutely hammer me in the comment section down below because, well, I might have a little bit of an unpopular take on 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons. But before I get into that and completely throw me toys out the cot, there's a couple of housekeeping things that need to be sorted out first. Today does mark the, deadline for getting an entry into the official Big Bot Bash 3, and it's not gonna happen. Unfortunately, new job, big project on at work, it has taken up far too much of my free time. I'm not even going to post an update photo because there's not a huge amount has been actually added to the armature since the last one that I posted. There's a lot of pieces have been made and done as sub-assemblies, but they've all got to be fitted together and we're nowhere near getting a paint job on it at the moment. I will carry on with that particular project because, like I say, it is one that was actually on the pile of shame, so I want to get it done, and I do want to, get another big bot model done for you guys. That's not to say that there is absolutely nothing in the way of crafting that has been done. I was at a loose end, had 5 minutes to spare, and noticed some of these terrain crates, so I grabbed out the fine liner and a couple of paints, so that is 3 more of those that have been done. And I also needed to paint up the final 2 members of the new 5th edition party. Again, these 2 were done primarily using speed paint. I am not 100% happy with the metallic speed paint. It doesn't seem to give the kind of contrast that I'm used to or after. I'm okay with it on the sleeker sort of plate mail stuff on the Dragonbone, but the sort of chainmail, splint mail combo that the dwarf's got, there's just something not 100% right about it. Saying that, it is probably a good contrast on the Dragonbone because he's a black Dragonbone. So if I'd used my usual black undercoat and then a dry brush of chainmail or whatever colour on top of that, then having black skin as well, I think it would have been too dark. So maybe it's the fact that, there is that sort of contrast in the miniature. That's why I'm a little bit happier with the plate mail. But that does mean that the scoreboard needs to be updated because there are 3 more terrain pieces and 2 more figures. Right, let's get on to the D&D stuff. Public service warning, old bloke is about to have a rant and throw his toys out the cot. Right, so a bit of background for newer viewers. I first started playing 2nd edition D&D when it came out in the late 80s. Was playing 1st edition before that, transitioned over to the new version. And that is the version that I've been playing exclusively since then. With maybe the odd foray off into different game systems, but in terms of D&D, it has been 2nd edition. In fact, the current group has been playing that for, must be getting close to 20 years now. The reason why we stuck with it is because, 1, it's a good system, and 2, none of us particularly wanted to fork out shed loads of money for material that we essentially already had. But we do have a new DM. The 5th edition stuff was lying around and we thought, maybe it's an easier system for a fledgling DM to get his head round, and so we've started playing that. Just as a little side note, the superhero game that I will be DMing on the odd occasion that the full group can't get together, that is based on 5th edition play and the 5th edition mechanics, even though it's a different game system. Silver Age Sentinels, I believe it is. So long story short, we've taken the plunge and we have gone over for some of our game sessions to 5th edition. This week just gone was the first time we actually got into combat. We kind of managed to avoid it, and an awful lot of the play was actual role play. So yeah, not too much of a problem. So here's my first question. At what stage did Dungeons and Dragons actually stop being Dungeons and Dragons? Because that is a completely different game system. I'm not saying it's difficult, because it's not. It seems massively watered down, but the mechanics of it are just alien. Where do I start? Well, it's just bland. Every character we've got, even though we've got one of sort of like the 4 major traditional D&D classes, is just the same. They can all do the same things. There's no specialists amongst them. Okay, fair enough. Wizards can cast spells, well, cantrips, and fighters still hit things with sharp pointy objects. But other than that, there's no difference. All of their skills are exactly the same. There's just nothing. For those of you who haven't played either 1st or 2nd edition D&D, and like I say, I don't know whereabouts the game system actually changed, but each character class actually used to be individual and special. And the whole idea of taking a balanced party was that you had sort of one of each specialist that could fill in the gaps and cover the weak spots that the other classes didn't have. A lot of classes had their own very special rules. I'll get into rogues in a second, because that's what I'm playing, not a happy camper. Now, in fact, no, because the rogue is the prime example. Back in 1st and 2nd, you used to have things called thief skills. Only a thief could do it. And you took a thief along because they were the ones that could pick locks, they could find traps, they could climb walls and, you know, potentially get you past impassable terrain, feed a rope back down to you, that kind of thing. That's what you took your thief for. They weren't brilliant in combat, in fact, were very fragile, they had to be protected, but you took one along because you needed one to be able to get past all of those mundane things that the other character classes couldn't realistically deal with, certainly at lower levels. Nowadays, from what I can tell, they climb exactly the same as anybody else. Yeah, they can hide, and that's about it. The ability to pick locks is done through their equipment rather than any kind of skills, which means rather than take an actual thief in the party, because they've got, you know, less hit points than other people and weapon and armor restrictions, you may as well just take an extra fighter, go down to the rough part of town, find a thief, give him a good hiding, nick his toolkit off him, and pass it to the cleric, because the cleric can unlock doors using the toolkit as well as the thief can. I can feel my voice getting higher. If I start getting Sonic and there's dogs 3 streets over that start barking, it's because of this. Right, I told you this was going to be a ranty one. So yes, bland. Apart from a couple of armor and weapon restrictions and a slight difference in hit points, there's no difference between any of the other classes. Now, again, fair enough, back in the traditional sort of D&D setting, it did seem as if it was very fighter-centric. Your first level characters, the fighter was basically the toughest one. He could wear the heaviest armor, he had the biggest stick. He was the one that was dealing the bulk of the damage. Your clerical priest, he was the one that sort of like gave the party buffs and did the healing. And he was basically the defensive one. So they were always good to have along with you. Not necessarily brilliant on the offense, but hey, that's fine. Thief or rogue as a specialist, I've already talked about. Your magic user at first level, you had a spell which could do something, and that was fine. And you sort of kept him protected within the rest of the party, because once he'd shot his load with that one spell, well, that was him basically for the rest of the time, unless he's, you know, coming at somebody with a penknife, which is not a good idea because he's got no armor and his weaponry, well, yeah, you may as well go for paper cuts. But get him up a couple of levels and suddenly, yeah, he's your big damage dealer. All right, fireball spell, no argument there. But that's where you got that sort of balanced cooperative play from. The fighter had to protect everybody. The cleric had to keep everybody healed. The thief had to disarm the traps that would kill everybody else. And everybody protected the magic user, because eventually the magic user was the one that was going to be throwing nukes down range, and it was going to be all on. Now, prior to this session, we had a little bit of combat. The adventure we are going through is, I believe, the Dragons of Icespire Keep. So it's one of the, you know, very basic sort of introductory sets. I don't know whether or not you guys have played it. Spoiler alert if you haven't. But there is a part where you go and have to warn some dwarves who are currently doing an excavation, and there is a temple and there are some ochre jellies they are the monster that is in there. We'd already kind of been pre-warned that melee combat with them was a bad idea, so we were searching through to find out basically what we could do against these things. And that is when I started really wondering whether or not this was the same system, because the most powerful combatant that we've got currently is the magic user. Cantrip, firebolt, unlimited casts, so he never runs out of ammunition, does the same kind of damage that I'm used to with a fighter and a two-handed sword, has the same chances of hitting at this level as a fighter does, so you may as well just stand him at the back of the party, form a shield wall, and watch him pick everybody else off. The cleric, he's got a fire spell as well. Now, I'm used to clerics, you know, handing out the buffs and the bandages, not sort of glancing at somebody and setting them on fire just because he feels like it. Essentially, against these things, the thief and the fighter are standing at the back with their thumbs up their bums and their brain in neutral. If that's the direction you wanted to take, you shouldn't have bothered calling it Dungeons and Dragons, just call it Harry Potter and the 5th edition. But I digress. We finally did manage to get into melee combat, and again it was against one of these ochre jellies. And this, I think, is where the big problem that I have with the changing of the rules mechanics comes along. You've got one of the slowest monsters in the game. It's a blob. It's got built-in speed penalties. We opened the door and there was one standing there. The cleric, who was the one that opened the door, managed to get out of the way, leaving the thief standing behind him. Initiative rules come in. It's an ochre jelly, not Usain Bolt. There is absolutely no way that a speed modified slow creature should be able to flobber 20 foot across the floor and have a smack at essentially the fastest member of the party. And the reason why is because they have changed it over to all D20s for every mechanic. Under 2nd edition, the chances of that ochre jelly getting the drop on the thief and the thief not being able to just dive out of the way or take a step backward, and I have worked this out, precisely 1 in 100. Because there is now a far greater number and range using D20s, it actually comes out that the ochre jelly has a better than 1 in 10 chance of being able to do that. Admittedly, yeah, not brilliant, but it's a complete different order of magnitude. I mean, this was against a character who was not surprised. He just stood there like a plum. What was it? Oh, yeah, I've got plenty of time to move out the way. Yeah, you're coming. No, I won't bother. No, yeah. Oh, you're getting quite close. Yeah, maybe I'll move in 5 minutes. Oh dear, I'm unconscious. Now, don't get me wrong. The fact that I wasn't just dead outright from one smack was a blessing in disguise. But again, it's almost as if 5th edition is like a video game version. Going down to 0 hit points in the old things was bad news. It meant you were dying. Now, all you're doing is having a nap, snooze for about an hour, and that's it. You're back up. No adverse reactions, dust yourself off, everything's fine. I mean, combat used to be a deadly affair. If you were getting close to 0 hit points, it was squeaky bum moment. Now, they just drag you out of the line, give you a cup of tea, pat on the back, and then you're up and at it, back into it. Like I say, it is very, very different. Vastly watered down. Yes, it's a role-playing game, and the fact that they've had to put specific mechanics when you're rolling up your character to actually give you ideas on how to role-play it, as opposed to just, you know, use an actual imagination. Come on. As for the actual books themselves, okay, admittedly, 1st edition was a little bit on the messy side. Hey, it was a new game concept idea. They hadn't quite got the hang of it. 2nd edition, beautifully laid out. You could look something up, get straight to it, no hassle. The dark pages, the scribbly little fonts in 5th edition. And don't get me started on the spell list. It doesn't matter what edition it is. With the amount of description that has to go into spells, the spell section is always the largest part of the player's handbook. Who on earth decided to just throw all the spells in alphabetical order. No cutting it down by spell level and then alphabetically, so that you could actually go straight to a section and narrow it down. You've got to flip through the whole lot like a dictionary. As for looking up any kind of rules, you know what I started doing? Because it was easier, and admittedly, with the advent of internetness, it's made it an awful lot easier. If there was any kind of rules quandary or anything like that, and the DM's reaching for a book, it was like, grab the cell phone out. 5e D&D, how does a thief climb walls? Now, don't get me wrong, I am not condoning you not getting the official material, purchasing the books, etc., and just going off the internet, and at the end of the day, you know, Google search can always get it wrong. Very convenient, but it does almost make the books themselves redundant, because you've got it right there in a better font that you can read. Right, deep breath. I am slightly more calm now. I will stop the rant there. If there is anything that I have said where it sounds as if we have managed to get it completely wrong, please let us know in the comments down below. The other players view the channel as well. They'll be keeping an eye on the comments. But what a shift. Seriously, it is a completely different game. It's not the Dungeons and Dragons that I grew up with. Sorry. It doesn't mean we're not going to be persevering with it. We have got, hopefully, at least one new player joining the group, and well, I've got to say it, a simpler game system for him to get his head round, and this is simpler than we're used to playing. Is probably going to be a good thing for his first introduction into role-playing games, and it will give him the opportunity to actually concentrate more on the actual interaction and role-playing part rather than the, you know, straight pure mechanics stuff. So we will be persevering with it, and as I say, I also need it for the superhero stuff. I will leave it there. Thank you so much for allowing me to get that off my chest. And if you want to hear more rants of things that I don't like about 5th edition, leave a comment down below as well for that. Hit like, subscribe, all that social media stuff. I am going to go and get back on with other things. You folks, enjoy the rest of your day, afternoon, evening, whatever it is. Toodle pip for now.